because we need to stall a bit.
Yes, we do. That's why we exist, to stall.
So up next we have an investing in Bitcoin panel, and that will be
Change the slides.
Yeah. Okay. You know that everyone can hear you, right?
Yeah, I know.
So
we keep it real. We don't need to hide behind the curtain of the stage. We just go all out.
So personally, this is like probably the most interesting panel for me. Investing in Bitcoin companies with moderator Stacy Herbert, who you all know is a co-host at the Kaiser Report.
He's also an investor with Heisenberg Capital. He founded that with Max Kaiser.
Yeah, and they also invested in Infinite Fleet, I guess. So that's what you're gonna say next.
They did.
Yeah. Meltem Demirors, was CSO at CoinShares, and maybe more famously also the speaker who at MCC 2019 took the toilet on stage and was throwing golden shitcoins to everyone. Nic Carter, who is general partner at Castle Island Ventures. Alyse Killen, founding partner at Stillmark, and one of the first, if not the first, VC to invest in this space. And Sachin Patodia.
Blockstream.
Why do you have to chill everything? Just leave it. I mean, come on. And Sachin Patodia, who is managing director at Avon Ventures. And let's see. You can all come on stage right now, and let's see if everyone made it.
Wait, can I be specific here? I wanted to ride in on a toilet.
Yeah, next year. That requires artwork.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, have fun, Stacy. Take it away.
Stacy.
There's no virtual stools to sit on, I guess.
This it?
Should we just go for it?
All right. While we wait for, I think so. Nick, do you want to be the moderator till Stacy unmutes?
Well, I don't want to steal her thunder.
All right.
But I guess we can start by introducing ourselves. I presume that's what she was going to ask us.
Do you want to go first?
Is it just the two of us, Meltem? Where is everyone?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm here too.
How are you?
Cool.
Hi, Alyse.
Okay, maybe
Guys.
instead of intros, because we already got introduced by Samson, WhalePanda, who did a great job, maybe we should take turns saying what our favorite company in the Bitcoin space is, since this is a panel about investing.
Ooh. Are we exempting portfolio companies? Should we make it the caveat that we can't name a portfolio company?
I'm cool with that.
Just to make it more challenging?
Let's do it.
So my favorite Bitcoin company that, I don't have upside in would probably be CoinKite. I just love open dimes. What can I say? They're the coolest, and I have a lot of them, and I have a cold card, and a hat, actually. I have all their stuff.
Nice. Sachin, do you want to go next?
Sure. My favorite company that's not a portfolio company is Cost. Secure multi-sig stores of Bitcoin.
We are getting a bit of an echo from one of you. I don't know whose fault that is, but someone's not wearing headphones.
Sinful. Sachin.
Let me go grab some headphones real quick.
Alyse, do you want to go next?
Sure, I'll go. So not a portfolio company, but I'll cheat this one a little bit. And I'll say that Blockstream is my favorite non-portfolio company. And it's a bit of a cheat because, as Samson said, as we were joining the panel, I'm on the board there.
Stretching the rules of our game at least a little bit, but
Yeah, you have to push the boundaries.
Can anybody hear me? Can anybody
Yeah, we
hear
can
me?
hear you now, Stacy.
Yeah.
Ah,
You're back.
all right.
We just started
well,
without you.
I know. And you know what? It was totally boring compared to what I had available. So I actually want to start with Alyse and ask you, why not just invest in Bitcoin itself? Like, is it at $10,000? Are you thinking like some Bitcoin companies might have like 50, 100x versus what is available to Bitcoin at the moment?
So I think that there are companies, so I think the Amazon and eBays of the blockchain and Bitcoin space are being formed today. So there will be companies that have a 50 to 100x plus potential against USD. But of course, if we're doing our job right and supporting the development of a really robust ecosystem on top of the Bitcoin blockchain, then Bitcoin should increase. We should be supporting the increase of Bitcoin as well. So, I think that Stillmark is in a really special position in that our own investor group is really made up of folks that largely have a position in Bitcoin. And I think that's the right way to approach investing in startups in the space, is to have a position in Bitcoin and then to support the development of the ecosystem by investing in the startups that are reliant on the tech and that are advancing access and utility.
Meltem, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Stacy, and it's one that comes up a lot. I think in my view, the opportunity for Bitcoin obviously is tremendous. We all believe that. That's why we're here on a Saturday morning at MCC nerding out about Bitcoin. But I think in my view, right, it's all about diversification. I think there's going to be value creation in a number of different areas. And the interesting thing about investing in Bitcoin companies is you're not just getting exposure to the upside of Bitcoin, but you're getting exposure to a number of different sectors, whether that's hardware, whether that's cybersecurity, whether that's payments, whether that's broader fintech, whether that's neobanks that are being formed on top of Bitcoin, using Bitcoin as the back end. So I really think of it as exposure beyond just the store of value proposition of Bitcoin itself. You're getting exposure to a number of different investment themes. And I think from portfolio diversification perspective, it is important.
Okay, and Sachin, I don't know how to pronounce your name properly, but I want, how do you pronounce it?
Sachin.
Okay, when you're looking at the Bitcoin market and allocating your capital, what are you seeing Bitcoin, the market share it's going to take? Is it going to take it from gold, treasury markets, forex markets, credit cards, PayPal? Like, what market are you looking at it displacing?
You mean Bitcoin, the asset itself?
Yeah.
I look at Bitcoin as digital gold. And I think that not that it's necessarily going to displace gold, but that it has the potential to capture a significant amount of the growth in, if you want to look at Bitcoin and gold combined, as a safe haven asset in the growth of that asset class as a unit. I think a significant amount of that growth will come into Bitcoin over the next decade. And to your other question, I think, we're all bullish on Bitcoin, but building some of these key pieces of infrastructure that will enable the growth of Bitcoin, it's bullish. It'll help accelerate Bitcoin adoption and Bitcoin price appreciation. And it in and of itself is an attractive investment proposition. And that's why we're investing in those businesses.
Nic Carter, do you see Bitcoin as that's the market of gold market? It's going to capture some of that, $10 trillion market, let's call it. Or is it going to be even bigger? Could it capture as well some of the forex market, the treasury market? Like, how big do you see it going?
Yeah, I think gold is kind of a good barometer for the world's demand in real terms for non-state monetary goods, which are hard to tamper with and have a predictable monetary schedule and exist outside of the legal system mediated by the state. So it's a good it's a good rough target to aim for, but of course, Bitcoin is many times better than gold in many respects. So it's better on the verification axis. It's better on the taking final physical delivery axis. It's better on the transmissibility and portability axis. And so it's my estimate that Bitcoin won't be subject to all of those downsides of gold, whereby it gets trapped in these walled gardens like the LBMA, or ends up just held by central banks effectively. Which is, the cause of that is because it's difficult to verify an inbound kind of gold payment. It's difficult to kind of take physical delivery of gold. So given that Bitcoin is so far superior to gold in those respects, and it doesn't have deficiencies which compensate for that, I think the target should be much greater than gold. I mean, there's just a set of assets which have monetary traits which people use for savings, whether it's property, equities, bonds, etc. They all have monetary premium. So I see Bitcoin going after all of them collectively. That's not to set a price target on it, but yeah, I think gold's market cap, 9 or 10 trillion, whatever it is today, it's a good barometer for what we could potentially be aiming for. But Bitcoin isn't just a replacement for gold. It's far better than gold in many, many respects. And so I expect that at maturity, it would capture more of that global kind of monetary premium than gold does today.
And Alyse, how do you view this question? And also, how does it inform your investment decisions? Is Alyse here?
I think Alyse mentioned that she just got dropped.
Oh, really? Okay. I see. I don't see either Meltem or Alyse. And I do want to tell the audience, yesterday I did float off like a balloon over the ocean and pass through some sort of dimension. I see Meltem there. Meltem, welcome back.
Hi. I'm kissing you again, Stacy. I'll kiss Nic too. I'll send you hearts. Great.
Did you float off over the ocean?
Yay, I love you guys. A lot of love.
Meltem, we were both Sachin and Nic answered this question in terms of, in fact, you've done great work on this, Meltem, and online. I've read this on Twitter, where you looked at key valuations, key metrics on how to value companies. So how do you look at this, the Bitcoin company space? Like, if, first of all, the asset itself of Bitcoin, do you see it, capturing, when you're looking at markets that it might capture? Are you looking at the gold market, Forex markets, PayPal, payments market, or like the treasury market or derivatives market? Like, what are you looking at, and what sort of metrics do you look at in particular?
Yeah. So I think on the valuation of Bitcoin, one of the interesting things we did recently is we did a long research paper on sort of Bitcoin as an asset and how it's categorized. I think one of the things that's really been challenging for more traditional asset managers and investors is, well, where does Bitcoin fit in my portfolio? What allocation should it come out of? And so I think what you saw is in the early days of Bitcoin, like from, the start of the Bitcoin network till about in 2018-ish, Bitcoin really was in many regards behaving like an early stage tech company or a tech stock, right? It was sort of viewed by many as a venture style allocation in a long-term sort of secular technology trend, which is very similar to how VCs invest, right? That's our thesis, I think, for all of us on this stage, is we see Bitcoin and digital currencies and this technology more broadly as a secular investment theme. And so within that, there will be cycles as the technology evolves and matures. So initially, I think Bitcoin very much was viewed in this sort of early stage tech venture bucket approach, which is why so many VCs were really the first advocates for Bitcoin, the first people who started allocating to Bitcoin in size. Then in 2018, what started happening is Bitcoin started to get increasingly financialized. And as Bitcoin became increasingly financialized, it started to integrate more with the legacy financial system. started to become more accessible. And so, and most importantly, the introduction of derivatives started to stabilize some of the historical volatility we'd seen in Bitcoin. And Bitcoin started to behave more like a tech stock index. And I think in this last 6 months, as a result of COVID-19 and as a result of monetary and fiscal policy around the world that's been implemented, money printer go brewer, as we like to say, Bitcoin really has started to grow into this narrative of store of value and really hedge against inflation. It is viewed, I think, right now by many investors who are talking about Bitcoin as a safe haven asset. I would say the digital gold analogy is an easy one, and I think it's one that I certainly have used in the past, but I don't think it's actually correct. I think as we look at what's happening around the world, with many countries imposing negative interest rates, with many countries imposing taxes on people's wealth and people's assets, or contemplating taxes on people's assets. For example, in Turkey, where I'm from, Turkey is proposing, I think, a 5% tax on all gold held by its citizens. They're imposing a 10% tax on all dollar balances held in banks, and 54% of Turkish consumers hold dollars in their bank accounts, right? 54% of consumer deposits is a huge tax base. Of taxing people's gold, that's a huge tax base. And because with dollars and with gold, you're dependent on the legacy financial system to custody your assets, you can't escape taxation. So I think in many ways for people, Bitcoin is becoming more akin to a Swiss bank account in your pocket. So I don't know how we value, money under people's mattresses or Swiss bank accounts or, assets that are unseizable. But I would say lately the narrative around Bitcoin has definitely started to move in that direction as more and more countries in the world, 70% of people in this world live under totalitarian regime or populist dictatorship. So I think this narrative around Bitcoin as a way to prevent the government from seizing your assets is actually the closer analogy I look to. Now, from an allocation perspective, I think with investment managers, we always talk about Bitcoin as a suitable alternative and portfolio diversifier. So it'd really fit into the alternatives bucket, which is akin to venture, private equity investments, ESG investments. So I think within sort of the investment landscape today, we see a lot of people viewing it in context of the alternatives bucket.
Well, that's very interesting because I don't know if you saw ARK Invest. They did some valuations based on, whether Bitcoin captures 1, 5, or 10% of certain markets and asset seizure markets. They predicted that if it captures 10% of that, then we could see Bitcoin hit 200,000. That was actually the most valuable they saw that market in particular. So Alyse Killen, we have two people on stage, Nic Carter and Sachin, who see basically Bitcoin kind of like gold, and that it's going to capture that market, that $9 to $10 trillion market. Meltem sees it more as a financialized tech sector sort of asset seizure protective, asset. So how are you looking at it? What do you see Bitcoin the asset as, and therefore your investments? Like what sort of ecosystem around it are you looking at? I see Alyse there, but I guess she can't hear us or speak. Okay, so we're going to skip that, but let's head on next to what I want to ask about is, Nic, we'll throw this to you first. Everybody's talking about Michael Saylor and the CEO of the S&P 500 company, MicroStrategy buying $425 million worth of Bitcoin for their treasury. But he said that he was drawn to Bitcoin because of the toxic Bitcoin maximalist community. So I want to ask you, as a VC looking to invest in a startup, do you factor that toxic Bitcoin community in as a risk that, the CEOs of the company you're investing in might actually get on the wrong side of the Bitcoin community? I myself have invested in a company which has very much gotten the wrong side of the Bitcoin community, and it's harmed the investment. So, how do you look at that?
That's a really interesting question. I think, it's a little bit diffuse what that term actually means, Bitcoin toxic maxi, whatever, people call me toxic maximalist, which makes no sense because I'm very nice. And I like own other assets. You know, I was like a Monero fan before I was like a hardcore Bitcoiner. So it makes absolutely no sense to call me a toxic maximalist, but people do. So I don't think that word actually means anything, but there obviously is the very real situation where you might have corporate objectives which diverge from what Bitcoin, the protocol, is kind of willing to tolerate. And, you know, the thing is that Bitcoin is most likely not going to change if you need it to accommodate you. Whereas, you know, so Bitcoin tends to be unyielding, and it ends up being startups that are building on Bitcoin that have to accommodate its rigidity. And there are a lot of startups that were started in 2013, 14, that were premised on Bitcoin as this kind of cheap, ubiquitous payments layer for the world. And
yes,
that, you know, that's just one example of a situation where part of their business model required that Bitcoin evolve in a certain way. And when Bitcoin failed to do that, a lot of their plans and objectives became uneconomical because they weren't commensurate with the way that Bitcoin worked in practice. In reality, they had planned for the kind of default situation from the early days of Bitcoin to last, especially with regards to fees. And when that didn't come to pass, you know, there was a lot of friction there. And eventually Bitcoin pretty much stayed the same. And a lot of the startups had to pivot, change their business model, or went out of business. So absolutely, we do take into account whether or not the corporate objectives and long-term strategy suit what we believe Bitcoin is likely to look like in a decade's time. And fundamentally, I don't think it looks that different from what it looks like today. But if you know, a founder comes to us and says, "Yeah, we're going to need these soft forks and, you know, these changes to Bitcoin," I would hope that they would, you know, be mature enough now that they know that it's very difficult for any individual corporate entity, no matter how influential or big, to change Bitcoin in any way. So it's something you really do have to build around, as opposed to projecting your own objectives onto the protocol.
Sachin, you come from more of an institutional background and deal with institutional investors. So, I mean, how do you explain the consensus mechanism to them? I guess that's a polite way of calling it.